Hi, this is Gese Michael Roach, and we're continuing our series of videos about all the organizations that are connected together for worldview, and all of them have a role to play in bringing the wisdom, the snow from the top of the mountain down to the ocean where people can drink it, or in the river. Okay? And so we've been going through all the different organizations, and I'll give you some history of the Asian Classics Institute. How did we start it? Why did we start it? And how it, I don't know, some funny stories. They're only funny later, right? About how much suffering it was to start these organizations. And then I'm going to turn it over to Tim Lowenhout, who's the director of the Asian Classics Institute, and he's going to tell us about what they're doing now and how they're going to continue by using the Castle Rock Fund endowment, which is going to help keep us going into future generations. So how did we start Asian Classics Institute? So I was going to classes of my teacher, my main scripture teacher, Kenrinpoche Geshe Losang Tarchen, and in his house, really. I built a house. And we built a classroom. It's 2 stories. First story was a classroom. And he would teach almost every day. He would give me some private classes, and then in the evening he would teach. It was usually about 15 people, 20 at the most. And he would take a book like Shantideva, Master Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, and he would teach it slow. And it would take, some of those books took 10 years. And there was no requirements in the class. People would come and go. People would be there. They would come to 2 classes. Then they'd get busy and they'd skip a month of classes, and then they'd come back. And then he was trying to teach the ancient languages. And people just didn't, only 2 or 3 people, 2.5 people really learned what he was teaching. And only 2 or 3 of us stayed for every class. And I was just watching it go on, you know. I was watching it and I was thinking, and I was taking my own Geshe course at the monastery. I was going through the Geshe course, and I saw how the Geshe program was designed for 20 years, 25 years. And I even put it in I think I put it in the ACI Logic course, which no one had ever done before. The whole series of the curriculum for the Geshe course. No one had ever written it down. And so I started thinking, you know, what would happen if you taught this stuff the way we learn it in an American high school or a university, you know? What if you had homeworks and a curriculum, and what if you went through it in a special order? And most importantly, what if you required attendance? And you know, so I took the whole Geshe course, and I took the most important readings, and I translated all of them. I think it's around, all the ACI courses are something like 20 or 30,000 pages. And I think one thing important is there's only one page in the 30,000 pages which is not translated from the ancient books, you know. So it's all only the ancient books that a Geshe studies. There's nothing from me in there, except one day I did a joke and I put the Boy Scout code in one page. I wanted to, and I translated it into Tibetan to see if anybody would notice. Nobody noticed. Or one guy said, "This sounds familiar." He was guessing. But anyway, I did 30,000 pages, and I remember how we started ACI classes. We rented a little tiny space in Hell's Kitchen. And that's a very dangerous part of New York. It's probably the most dangerous part of New York. Nah, second most dangerous. And I remember, people coming to class, and they said there's a guy, a drunk guy out front with a gun. He's waving a gun, and I'd say, yeah, walk across the street. Don't walk on that side of the street. Just go around, and don't, I would like yell at the students, don't walk by the guy with the gun. Always walk around, And some guy came in his car, and the car got stripped while he was in the class, and it's so funny. And we couldn't afford anything, so we just had this tiny little classroom. And I remember the first day of classes, ACI 1, class 1, and I made an announcement. I said, you gotta come to 9 out of 10 classes. And if you miss more than that, you fail. You can't come back. And you have to be on time. No Dharma student in America was on time. So I said, I'm locking the door, at the time that the class starts, I am locking the door. And I'll never forget an old-time student, Michael, maybe you know him. He's been studying for almost 50 years. And I locked the door, and he came late. And he's banging on the door, and he said, you gotta let me in, And I said, no, I told you, I'm locking the door. And if you miss more than one class, you're out of the class until next term. And he's like, you're just a damn Dharma Hitler. He was screaming through the door, And I'm like, I don't care, it's all right. So I think it was the first time that Westerners were required to follow the course of study. And they were required to come to class. And they were required to come on time. And it was the first time in 1,000 years that women were allowed to study the Geshe course. And I got big trouble from all the, big authorities. They said women should not study the Geshe course. What are you doing? They gave me a really hard time. And I just ignored them. And I went ahead and taught the women. In fact, the women did the best. They got the highest grade. You got grades in the class. And nowadays, those same authorities have allowed the first woman Geshe recently. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So we started in Hell's Kitchen. We sat around a table. ACI was, I think, 5 people around the table. And then it got too crowded, and we rented another room. And that got too crowded. And then we moved to a Japanese cultural center, and it had about 30 seats, and that got too crowded. And then the Dharma Hitler guy, he was a maintenance guy in a public school. So he got permission for us to have classes at the cafeteria, mostly in a basement. So we had classes in the cafeteria. We outgrew that, and then we we rented the Quaker church in the Greenwich Village in New York, Lower East Side. Finally, they kicked us out and I said, why are you kicking us out? I thought you were open to all religions. They said, we are, but now everybody's calling this the Buddhist church. And that's uncomfortable. So, but at the end, we had about 100 good students. They worked hard. They learned the Geshe course. And they took a baby Geshe examination. And I will say, I had a very beautiful experience where one of those students, Juan Hassel, he came with me to India one day. And I was visited by my teacher's nephew, I'm very, very close to him. He's about 82 now. And he came with 2 young Geshes, to the hotel. And I had Juan there, who finished the ACI courses. And he started to ask the Geshes questions, and they couldn't answer. And then this big debate started, and I was translating. And I was so proud to see that the ACI course really was equal to the Geshe course. And I would say that if I had to choose the winner of that debate, it was Juan, who did the 18 ACI foundation courses. So I think ACI is wonderful. I think Buddhism used to be for everybody, and then it became monastic. Then it was locked into monasteries. And I think it's a very exciting change. I think ACI has changed the model to where everybody can learn. And you don't have to be a monk, you don't have to be in a monastery, you can be a family person, and you can be a beautiful person and take these courses. What are you guys doing nowadays? What's up with ACI nowadays?
Well, what's really neat about what you had said is, we've had teachers just start the 18 courses recently, and you talked about building the house for your own teacher, and what these teachers have done is they've started building their own houses for their own students, right, and bringing the lineage of these teachings to new people. And so we had a group that just started in Germany. Their first class had 350 people in it.
Wow.
We just had a class start last week, 2 weeks ago. There were almost 400 people in that class.
Wow, that's cool.
Just starting ACI, the very first courses of ACI.
Wow.
And there's what you just said is it has become more for everybody.
Yeah, cool.
And I mean there is a very, what you're saying, there's a very strict way that we're going through the courses, but we're also opening it up to, we're not saying you have to be a Buddhist. We're saying there's wisdom here for you. And so what we're doing is, with the changes that we've had to do with COVID, we went inside and said, well, how do we reach more people? And with the technological advances, it's been rather simple.
Unexpectedly simple.
Unexpectedly simple. We just turn on a camera, we turn on Zoom, and we teach people.
Wow, cool.
And that's what we're finding is more and more people want to take the classes, but then more and more people want to pass it on.
Yeah, cool. Right? Yeah, they should, right?
And we started, just a few years ago, we started a teacher training course to make sure we're staying in line with your vision for the teaching the courses. It's not just about taking knowing the courses, knowing the homeworks and the quizzes, but you also then, how do you convey that in an accurate and accessible way?
Yeah, cool.
And so where we want to go with this is how can we reach more people? And right now building our houses, that a lot of the new teachers have this, that they just go into their living room, or they rent we said to rent a small room in a school.
Yay.
I remember we were teaching 8 years ago in Philadelphia in a small church, right? It was the Episcopal church in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. They let us rent a room, right? And that's how a lot of ACI teachers start.
Cool.
But how do we, from the home office, how do we support them?
Yeah.
Because we're doing international events where we have, we had an event last month that had 2,000 people there.
Wow.
And that was just paid people.
Yeah.
And then because we always offer our teaching for free as well, that we had another 1,000 or 2,000 people just listening. And that's just during the time of the course, not to mention how many people watch online, because we archive everything as well.
Yeah, cool.
And all of those things have costs.
Well, I think people don't really understand that to keep a video in existence is expensive.
Yes. And we have a whole team of people around the world that not only do they record them, but they also translate them into 9 languages. We do voiceover, so we have subtitles. We do for people who can't, who can't listen, who can't hear well. We do the voiceover so people can listen to them as podcasts, and then we archive them online. And there's a lot of costs associated with that.
Well, I know the knowledge base, for example, has 15,000 materials there, and it's just, it takes a lot of time, and nobody understands how long it takes to translate a talk. It's an intense amount of time, and then that's a lot of bytes, and that's for 15,000 of those. Even just the storage online is very expensive.
It is indeed.
Yeah.
And what we're doing here at the ACI home office is supporting all of those teachers.
Yeah, cool.
We've just developed an online platform that actually came from the Russian-speaking audience.
Yay.
That they supported an online course deployment program
Wow.
that allows students to get the courses online, do the homeworks online, grade them. There's 1,800 people in Russia alone, in the Russian-speaking world alone, taking ACI courses.
Wow, that's cool.
So they can grade them online and they get their certificates online. And what we're doing is then providing that platform, which includes marketing, includes course communications. If you're charging for courses, if you have, rental fees and things like that, you can charge right through that. You can do donations through that platform. That we hand that to the teachers and say, here's all the tools that you need to go teach.
Cool.
So then the teachers aren't burdened as much with having to rent all the places. It's a lot of money.
That used to be harder than teaching, was trying to find the money for the places.
But then home office is burdened with the costs of that, and we take on that responsibility. So one of the main focuses of having the storage facility, the Castle Rock Fund, endowment fund, is to be able to support our teachers as they go out and teach around the world.
I think it's going to allow future generations. I paid everything myself. I used to work in the diamond business. I'd run from work to teach the class. The first ACI classes were always taught twice every week. So I was teaching 4 nights a week, twice in the Tibetan track and twice without the foreign language. And then the same classes. And then I had to pay for everything. And when I finished the second series, I was about $80,000 in debt. And you can't keep it up. You can't keep that up, So you got to have, that's what the idea of the Castle Rock Fund is, that we have some kind of endowment so the income is coming in so we can teach people.
And one of the main missions of ACI is to keep it free and accessible.
Yeah.
There's a lineage of this is free wisdom. We're not, we're not putting it behind a lock and key.
Yeah, I was never charged. And, what people don't mention about the great monasteries, that have sometimes 15,000 monks there, they're free. They don't charge anything. My teacher never charged in his life for anything. And but there's another half to the story, which is that the students always support the teacher, and nobody asks them, nobody requires them. But it's a beautiful relationship where during the teacher's active years, the teacher actually pays for the food, the clothing, the place to stay, the classes. And then there's the shift when the teacher gets older. The students take over all the expenses, and they start supporting the teacher. And then that system just keeps going for thousands of years. And it's a cool system. We don't have that really. So actually, we do need. People ask me, why is this course not for free? And I say, well, we're planning on making it free, completely. And I called the airline and said, we want to make free courses, so can we have free airplane tickets? And they told me they'd go to hell. So, So anyway, there are expenses. And we're always happy. I think all of us are happy to give all that we have, but sometimes it's not enough and we need help.
And that's what our goal with the Castle Rock Fund is to to relieve that burden a bit. And be able to then continue to support our teachers and our students and spread this wisdom to people around the world in many, many languages.
I think it's an honor for a teacher to pay for things. I've always found it was an honor, and I'm happy to do it, but it also limits what you can do. You can't, if you can't pay for 10,000 students, it's just, there's a limit to how much you can do. So I think the Castle Rock Fund is going to be awesome. Thank you for working on it. I know you're working on it personally. And all that finance stuff, I don't even understand it. But,
and thank you for teaching all these courses originally and putting all that time and money. And you worked full-time and you worked full-time at ACI for many, many years.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing the fruits of that
Yeah.
spread around
It's
the world.
awesome.
So thank you.
Thank you.